Hello, children. Welcome to this week's Storyteller Bible Time.
It's a new year, a very belated Happy New Year to all of you. And a new year is always a fresh start. Although, of course, this year is a bit different. Many of you are watching this from home and not in school. I wonder, do you have a friend who you really like to share things with? It's so wonderful, isn't it, to have a friend you can trust. And although we're not able to meet up with them at the moment, we can stay in touch with them in other ways.
So let's open the book at the story called God's Friend.
Now, before we start, we need your help because we'll have all kinds of laughing and giggling noises in this story. So we've got a lovely giggle bug, which we'll show you in a minute. But let's just practice a bit because the three words that come up quite often are giggling. So can you try giggling at home? What does that sound like? Or in school if you watch it in school? Maybe. Then chortle. Chortle is about unusual.
That's a fun word, isn't it?
Chortle. Some people would also call it chuckle. How do you chuckle?
Maybe something like that.
Maybe like that. And then the easiest one is laughing. Just laugh out loud.
And we have our giggle bug who will help us do that. So listen to this.
It has all kinds of giggling and laughing sounds.
All kinds of
Brilliant.
different types. And we thought we could do with a bit of laughing and giggling. And
That's
it
right.
ties in with the story. So,
Here we go.
Abraham was rich. He had lots of servants to do his work for him. And he had lots of camels and sheep. And he lived with his wife in a very nice place called Haran. One day, God spoke to Abraham. "I want you to leave Haran," he said, "because I have a better place for you to live in."
Now, Abraham might have said something like, "Where?" or "How far?" or even, "Thank you very much, but I'm quite happy here." But he didn't. In fact, he said, zilch. Zip. Nothing at all. He just gathered up his wife and his servants and his camels and his sheep and went where God was leading him. Why? Because Abraham trusted God. It was as simple as that.
Canaan was the name of the place where God led Abraham. A land flowing with milk and honey is what some people called it, which means that there were many cows and goats and bees and plenty of flowers and grass for the animals to eat. It was altogether a very pretty place, even nicer than Haran, and Abraham liked it very much.
The only problem was that Abraham had no children. And besides that, both he and his wife, Sarah, were very old. Grandpa and grandma old. And maybe even older than that. Maybe great-grandpa and great-grandma old.
But Abraham trusted God. So one night, God said to him, "Abraham, look up. Do you see the stars? One day you will have so many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that counting the stars will be an easy job compared with counting them."
"Now, Abraham," said God, "look down. Do you see the ground? One day there will be more members of your family than there are bits of earth on that ground."
What did Abraham do? He chuckled. That's what. He giggled. He chortled. He laughed. "Me and my wife have children," he cackled. "We are much too old for that."
But God wasn't joking. You will indeed have a son, he said, and through your family, I will do something wonderful for the world.
So Abraham trusted God. And it wasn't long before God sent 3 messengers to visit him. Abraham was very kind to them. He washed their feet,
Ooh, that's a bit smelly.
which was the polite thing to do in those times. He washed their feet, as I just mentioned. Then he served them fresh baked bread and a creamy beef stew. It was delicious. And as the visitors were patting their tummies and wiping their mouths, they said, "We will be back next year, and when we return, Sarah will give birth to a son."
Someone giggled. Someone chortled. Someone laughed. But it wasn't Abraham this time. No, it was Sarah, his wife, who had been listening in the tent nearby.
And the next year, when God's promise came true and the baby was born, there was laughter again. So much laughter, in fact, that laughter is what they decided to call their son, for that is what the name Isaac means. Lots of laughter.
So God's promise to Abraham came true. He did have children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And Abraham was glad that he trusted in God. Let's close our eyes for a moment and be still. And think of a good friend who we can trust.
Now I'm going to say a prayer, and if you want to make this prayer your own, you can say Amen at the end. Dear God, thank you for friends we can laugh with and friends we can trust. Thank you that Abraham trusted you and was called a friend of God. Help us to understand what it means to trust you and be a friend of God too. Amen.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this first assembly of the year. Below this video, you can find a link to a great song which encourages us not to be discouraged, not to be afraid. Some of you may remember it from school assemblies, and you can listen to it and sing along.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.